Jiang realized that the undead tyrant was too fast and each of its attacks were also powerful. The undead tyrant lifted the mace from the ground and gained momentum. For Jiang, it was like a raging bull that had gone out of control. But this was also a weakness. Little Nine tried to attack the undead tyrant using her sharp tentacles, but it started spinning its body at high speed and dodged them effortlessly. Gaining momentum, it began to quickly advance towards Jiang. Several seconds later, it made a big leap. Jiang lifted his head towards the undead tyrant, and while staring at it intently, he thought that this was not good. He had already sensed it just now. There were many hidden roots beneath the ground. While the undead tyrant was in the air, it grabbed the mace with both hands, and as it quickly advanced towards Jiang, it prepared to attack. As Jiang watched it slowly getting closer, he decided to use his talent at the moment when it got close enough, and this would stop it in its tracks. Several seconds later, once the undead tyrant got close enough, Jiang started staring at it and decided that this was the moment. He reached out his hand towards the ground and a green symbol appeared in it. He used his talent, and gradually the spiritual roots hidden beneath the ground began to emerge. Jiang turned his body towards the undead tyrant, and while giving it a deadly stare, he extended his hand towards it. In a matter of seconds, 4 spiritual roots emerged from the ground and attacked the undead tyrant, piercing through its body in the process, and trapping it in midair, rendering it unable to move. While Jiang had his hand extended towards it, and his body was emitting a powerful aura, he began to look at Little Nine and told her that it was now her turn. In the blink of an eye, Little Nine reached the undead tyrant. She placed a hand on its head, and while preparing her claws with the other, she stared at it with a murderous gaze and responded to Jiang with an understood master. Upon realizing that Little Nine was ready to attack, its expression changed drastically as it realized that something bad was about to happen. It tried to defend itself, but it was in vain. Just before it could make a move, Little Nine gained momentum, and using her sharp claws and tentacles, she attacked it, piercing its body in half and destroying the spiritual roots in the process. In a matter of seconds, the undead tyrant's corpse fell to the ground, while Jiang had his hand extended towards the sky and was controlling the spiritual roots. He began to stare at the undead tyrant's corpse and couldn't help but feel proud. He had managed to defeat the undead tyrant. Jiang's ability was secure enough, so as long as he used his skills properly, he could still play a great role in battles. While he was lost in his thoughts, a system notification appeared to inform him that the growth acceleration was on cooldown for 8 hours. Because of this, slowly but surely, the spiritual roots began to disappear. Several seconds later, the core emerged from the undead tyrant's corpse. Upon seeing this, Jiang decided to break it immediately. Just before the core could fly away, Jiang approached and grabbed it with his hand. He then clenched his fist tightly, shattering the core into pieces. As the fragments of the core gradually fell to the ground, Jiang started staring at his fist with an aggressive look and thought that this was the end. At that moment, several system notifications appeared, congratulating Jiang for clearing the C-rank secret realm called the Temple of the Undead. The system began calculating the contribution, and a few seconds later, successfully generated the secret realm score. Jiang Chen, who was level 0 and had the class of Spiritual Master, obtained an S rating in this secret realm. Wang Yi, who was level 12 and had the class of Swordsman, obtained a B rating. Liu Ying, who was level 11 and had the class of Warlock, obtained an A rating. And Yi Qiang, who was level 10 and had the class of Boxer, obtained a B rating. The heavenly system began generating team rewards, causing a window to appear in front of Jiang. Several seconds later, the system successfully generated the team rewards, making the window longer. Jiang could choose from several weapons. The first one was a dagger, the second one was a scepter, the third one was a heavy axe, the fourth one was a light axe, and the fifth one was a hammer. As the spiritual roots slowly returned to the ground, Jiang started staring at the system window and remained lost in thought for several seconds. He put his hand into the system window and grabbed the dagger. Once he took the dagger out of the system, its statistics appeared. This was Edmu's Swift Dagger, ranked D, granting 50 attack points to the user and a 5% speed bonus. This dagger was related to swords and granted 2 professional attributes. Jiang held the dagger with one hand while checking the blade with the other. He thought it was good and decided to use it as compensation for Uncle Wang. He turned his head to one side, and while looking at the system window, he thought there was a lot of equipment. It didn't take him long to realize that all of the equipment was geared towards combat. He wasn't sure if there was anything suitable for the creation classes. He approached the system window, put his hand inside the system, and decided to take a look at the attributes of each equipment. he grabbed the hammer from the system window, and once he pulled it out, the hammer hit the ground because it was very heavy. This hammer was called Call of the King, granting 100 strength points to the user and deducting 100 agility points due to its weight. The attribute of this weapon was that the user had a 10% chance to trigger 5 times more critical damage. While Jiang was trying to lift the hammer from the ground, he began to feel a new sensation. A notification window appeared to inform him that the experience was being rewarded. Upon seeing this, he quickly realized that the system was giving him the experience points he had obtained from this secret realm. Although the hammer was very heavy, thanks to the experience, Jiang gradually became able to lift it. In a matter of seconds, he was able to lift the hammer as if it were nothing. Another notification of the system appeared to inform him that the United ability was in effect. Now all of Jiang's attributes had increased by 20%. While his body was surrounded by a powerful energy, and with one hand he was lifting the hammer, he put the other hand in his pants pocket and turned his head towards the hammer. Under the passive ability of the Insect Mother, he had reached level 6. In this way, the effect of United was also more prominent. He also realized that the physical combat ability increased along with the level. While he was lost in his thoughts, Little Nine approached him. She grabbed his shirt and got his attention. Upon hearing her voice, Jiang snapped out of his trance. She turned her head towards him and while pointing at the system window with her finger, she asked if she could eat all this as a reward. He put the hammer on the ground, turned his head towards her, and while looking into her eyes, he pondered for several seconds. He turned his head towards her and told her that Little Nine couldn't eat the equipment, as it was for Uncle Wang and the others to exchange for money. He also added that if Little Nine ate it, then she would have a stomachache. Upon hearing this, she placed one hand behind her back and while touching her lips with the other, she began to look at Jiang with a sad expression. Then, she turned her body towards the undead tyrant's corpse and asked Jiang if she could devour it. He had completely forgotten about the remains of the boss. The devouring value was precious and could not be lost. While his body was surrounded by a powerful aura, he turned his head towards the corpse of the undead tyrant and gave Little Nine permission to devour it since it belonged to her. Without hesitation for a second, Little Nine approached the corpse of the undead tyrant, which was gigantic. While Jiang was looking at its corpse, he began to wonder if this boss wasn't a bit too big. Due to its large size, if Little Nine used the poisonous mist to corrode it, then it might take her some time. Little Nine extended her hands to the sides, closed her eyes, opened her mouth and told Jiang that she was digging. At that moment, her body started vibrating and in a matter of seconds she returned to her natural form. After returning to her natural form, she began to look at the corpse with a murderous gaze, opened her mouth, and started approaching it. Despite the fact that the undead tyrant's corpse was gigantic, compared to the mother insect's natural form, it was minuscule. Seeing that she had returned to her natural form to devour the corpse, Jiang was terrified. She opened her mouth and while rapidly advancing towards the boss corpse, she began roaring. She began to devour the corpse, creating a strong gust of wind in the process. Jiang took advantage of this and removed all the equipment from the system window. While holding the hammer with one hand, he started covering his face with the other. Little Nine's roar was too loud, but luckily they were in the secret realm. If this had happened in the main city, they would have been discovered no matter how well they tried to hide. Once she finished devouring the corpse, a system notification appeared and granted Jiang 400 devouring points. While Jiang was covering his face with his arm, he realized that the devouring value was increasing rapidly. He thought that, as expected, the value of the boss's meat was different. He realized that they needed to eat more boss-type monsters to increase the devouring value. While he was lost in his thoughts, someone started approaching them. Upon hearing the sounds of footsteps, he quickly turned his head back and clenched his teeth tightly as he realized that Uncle Wang and the others were coming because they had heard the noise Little Nine had made. The current devouring value was 8876 points. He approached Little Nine and asked her to quickly return to the other form. Upon hearing his order, she started smiling and replied with a understood master. For Jiang, this was a pity as the devouring value was so close to being filled. Several seconds later, Uncle Wang and the others arrived. Upon seeing the equipment on the floor, he realized that Jiang had indeed passed the level. Jiang explained to Uncle Wang that he had broken his sword, but in exchange, he gave him the dagger. Without hesitation, Uncle Wang took the dagger and upon seeing that it was a rare item, he told Jiang that he would not pursue the matter of Jiang damaging his equipment. Zai approached Jiang and explained that this necklace was also a rare item which could be sold for a lot of money. Yiqiang asked him how the hell he had defeated the boss alone. Jiang put his hand behind his head and replied that his poison seemed to be more effective in suppressing monsters like this boss. After saying this, with a serious look, Jiang began to look down at the ground. The secret realm had been perfectly cleared, but after a secret realm was cleared, it would not refresh again. Getting the devouring value from another boss should be enough to start breeding the swarm of insects. If Jiang wanted to find a new boss, then he had no choice but to go to the desert. Uncle Wang started looking at Jiang and told him that it was a shame he was going to the research department, seeing that he wasn't even level 1 yet could already defeat a boss monster. He told him that in the future, if Jiang leveled up, then he would be strong. After saying this, he asked him what his plans were now. Jiang turned his head towards him and with a smile explained that he hadn't told him before because he was afraid of worrying him. But actually, he was preparing to join the Night's Watch. Upon hearing this, Uncle Wang was shocked and asked if he really intended to join the Night Watch. Jiang placed his hand on top of his head and answered yes. He revealed to them that he was going to go to the Night Watch in 3 days. Before going, he wanted to increase his level, so he planned on heading towards the wilderness soon to continue leveling up. Upon hearing this, Uncle Wang was shocked, and Yi Qiang put her hand over her mouth as she couldn't believe that Jiang was going to do something so dangerous. Xiao Zai reached out her hand towards him and while looking into his eyes with a serious expression, she explained that the wilderness was very dangerous. Just before she could finish speaking, Jiang interrupted her. He clenched his fist tightly, causing Little Nine's poisonous mist to start emerging in the palm of his hand. He asked Xiao Zai not to worry about him, as he knew what to do. He asked them instead of worrying about him, to worry about those monsters. That same day, a few hours later, Jiang boarded the train and arrived on the outskirts of the city. The conductor asked those who were going into wilderness to get off the train. Jiang got off the train. He was wearing a cloak to avoid drawing attention. He started looking to one side and stood still for several seconds. In front of him there was a bridge which was full of awakeners. After awakening the system, Jiang's appetite had increased. What was even more scandalous is that despite not being very stable, there was actually a slight increase in his devouring value when eating. He took out a loaf of bread and while he was eating it, his devouring value increased by 2 points. Little Nine manifested herself, put her hand near her mouth, and while she looked at the bread with an unpleasant expression, she told Jiang that his food wasn't tasty. Upon hearing this, Jiang decided to find something to eat for Little Nine, so he reached out his hand and made a map appear. He opened the map and started looking at it with Little Nine. He didn't expect Uncle Wang to give him most of the equipment. Not only did he give him the map, but he also gave him an important storage ring and a map after knowing that he was going to the desert. These things were really helpful for Jiang. He began walking across the bridge. According to Uncle Wang, the wilderness was influenced by the power of Heavenly Way, and all electronic devices would be disrupted. It was almost like an apocalyptic scenario where monsters constantly migrated to their nests. These maps had an extremely short usage time. Without the latest intelligence, it was difficult to find groups of monsters, let alone the bosses. Firebird and Thunder Rhinoceros were the most common ones and were easy to spot when they moved. It was said that this place marked with a question mark should be avoided as it was a very dangerous nest with higher risk. According to Uncle Wang, this goblin dungeon was the most suitable for him since it had a low level, enough monsters, and fewer people. While Jiang was looking at the map, he clenched his fist and with a smile decided to go, since with a map in hand, he would be able to find it quickly. While he was lost in his thoughts, someone caught his attention and ordered him to stop. Upon hearing this, Jiang became alert and turned his head back to see who it was. A man wearing a cloak placed his hand on Jiang's shoulder, then he stared at Jiang aggressively. He had been calling for him all this time, so he asked why he pretended not to hear him. He just wanted to ask him something. He asked Jiang if he had seen a girl with golden hair around here. Jiang turned his head towards him and with a murderous look replied that he hadn't and also advised him to watch his mouth. At that moment, the poisonous mist from Little Nine started emanating from his shoulder and stuck to the man's hand. He quickly moved his hand away from Jiang's shoulder and became somewhat confused. While he was looking at his hand, he clenched his teeth tightly and began to wonder if this was poison. He didn't know how this could be possible since Jiang didn't seem to have reached level 10 yet. However, Jiang couldn't harm him as the man was a level 27 main defense warrior. Jiang turned his back and as he walked away, advised him to hurry up and find a healer since his poison must be difficult to cure. He also advised him to take care of his brain. After saying this, he bid farewell to the man. Upon hearing this, the man couldn't help but get angry. He called Jiang's attention and asked if he had given him permission to leave. Upon hearing this, Jiang turned his head towards him and began to look at him with a murderous gaze. The man approached Jiang, and while his body was emitting a powerful aura, he stared at him with a killer look and asked how dare he lay a hand on the Xiao family. Upon hearing this, Jiang began to wonder if he was referring to the Xiao family in the Battle of Heaven. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like.